welcome to the honorable mentions of my top 50 roller coasters. In just a few weeks, I will upload my top 50 coasters as of 2020, but to get a bit more time talking about the coasters there, I decided to rank the 20 honorable mentions first, meaning this is basically the spot 70 to 51 of my ranking. These rides all have their qualities, but in my opinion they don't deliver as much as some other rides. I currently have a coaster count of 187, so these rides still are on solid spots. And now, let's begin. Coming in at number 70 is Rutschebahn at Backen. This is the third oldest coaster that I've ridden, and it delivers. It's not outstanding by any means, big parts of the ride are not special, but the ride has a few really good airtime moments. As well as that, it's a really smooth woody, except for the trains, those are really bad. Don't expect too much from this ride, but for its age and size it is a solid coaster. On the spots 69 and 68 sits Winge's Fear and Force at Phantasialand. This is a dueling Maurer spinning coaster and it's really fun. I count it as 2 credits and I do prefer Fear over Force as it's a bit more extreme in a few spots, though I do prefer the surprises on Force. They are the same ride for the most part, but it's great that there is some variation. This is a family-oriented ride, but it is definitely quite thrilling nonetheless. There's also a good amount of theming on this ride, which I really like. Overall, Winge's is a unique and very fun ride that shouldn't be overlooked, but of course it's not super extreme or anything. Giant Dipper at Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk comes in at number 67. Before I start talking about this ride, I have to admit, I don't remember much of this ride other than it being pretty fun. This ride could easily go higher or lower in my ranking if I would ride it again, but that won't happen for a long time. Anyways, Giant Dipper is the second oldest coaster that I've ridden, and it's really iconic. Being located right next to the water is such a cool aspect of the ride, and the actual ride is surprisingly fun. For being almost 100 years old, this is a really good ride, but again, nothing outstanding. On number 66 and 65 are the backlot stunt coaster clones at Kings Island and Canada's Wonderland. I really expected these to be pure family coasters, but boy was I wrong. These clones deliver a well-themed and pretty thrilling experience. They are not that extreme the entire time, but a good portion of the ride is on a high level, especially the launch is very powerful and the triple helix is a very strong element as well. I slightly prefer the version at Kings Island because the effects were working on that. Now number 64 is a quite controversial pick, so I got to explain myself here. It is Wodan at Europa Park. This is one of the biggest and most themed GCIs out there, but stats don't mean everything. I do appreciate the theming, though it's not that great. But let me get straight to the point. The layout is utter garbage. GCI messed up here. After the decent first drop, the ride has a high speed for pretty much the entire layout, but the elements are awful. The first half has no airtime, no laterals, and no good positives. It is also rougher than your average GCI. In the second half it gets a bit better as you actually get some of the GCI feeling, but it doesn't save the ride. Another problem is the length, as the ride is over in an instant. Sure, it's quite fun, but for such a big attraction it fails to deliver. Coming in at number 63 is Colorado Adventure at Phantasialand. This is one of the few good old Vekomas. It is a long and really fun mine train. Sure, with 3 lift hills there are some boring parts, but especially towards the end of the coaster it's amazing. It basically gets better after every lift hill, which is great. I still would say that the first third could be scrapped because that is boring and janky, but that is really the only major downside with this ride. Number 62 is Montezuma's Revenge at Knott's Berry Farm. Now this is another coaster that I don't remember too well because I've only ridden it once, but this Schwarzkopf shuttle launch coaster packs quite a punch. The loop is pretty forceful and you go through it forwards and backwards, so this is a funky experience. But of course the ride could very well move up or down in my rankings if I would get some rewrites. On number 61 is Speed of Sound at Walibi Holland, another coaster that traverses through its layout forwards and backwards. Now some of you might think I'm crazy for ranking a Vekoma boomerang this high, but hear me out. This is the best boomerang out there. Vekoma boomerangs actually pull up to 5.2 Gs, so these are intense rides, but many of them are not that comfortable. Luckily, Speed of sound is a lot smoother than the other boomerangs while still being just as forceful. A huge bonus of this boomerang is definitely the onboard audio that makes the ride a lot better. On top of that, the ride features vest restraints so you can't get any headbanging. Moving on, Blue Fire at Europa Park takes the 60th spot. This is Mach Ride's first major thrill ride, and I say that it could have turned out worse. There is some pretty good theming around the coaster, a few nice rockwork parts during the ride, and an awesome soundtrack as well as a good pre-show. Sadly, however, the ride is sponsored by a Russian gas company, which is annoying in the first part of the queue. So, this launch coaster has a lot of potential, but I think the big downside of this coaster is the speed and the size of some of the elements. Aside the boring launch, all of the taller elements are forceless, because the speed at which the train traverses through them is often too slow. The vertical loop is taken too fast for hang time but too slow for good Gs, the twisted horseshoe roll doesn't deliver any 0G or whip, and the airtime hill doesn't provide any airtime. The only pretty good elements on this ride are the turn after the loop and the final inline twist, but at least the ride is still very smooth, which can't be said about some other Mach coasters. Coming in at number 59 is Demonin at Tivoli Gardens. I know I might rank this B&M Flawless coaster really high, but it is a very fun ride. Sure, it's not tall and long, but it delivers some good forces. The first few turns after the lift hill before the drop provide a good view of the surrounding area, and the first drop has some alright airtime, but not too much. The vertical loop is pretty standard. It provides some solid Gs, but that's it. Same thing goes for the Immelmann, nothing too crazy either. Without a doubt the best part of the ride is the 0G roll. That has some alright whip and pretty good 0G, and it is just a really fun element. After that, the final few turns are not really that intense, so that is pretty much it. Tivoli Gardens doesn't have that much space to work with, so B&M did a good job with Demonin. I ranked this ride so high because it's just a very fun and rideable coaster. Oh, and it's really photogenic, especially at night. On number 58 sits Star Trek Operation Enterprise at Movie Park Germany. First things first, this Mach Ride's multi-launch, or technically shuttle launch coaster is a fun attraction that fixes some of my problems with Blue Fire. This coaster is better themed and has a movie theme instead of a sponsor, so I already like that more. The actual ride starts with a forwards, backwards, forward launch section with a spike after the backwards one. The launches are nothing special, but for Mach Rides they are somewhat decent, and the spike is really fun, but not as good as the Wicked Twister spikes. After the launches, there is a kind of weird top hat that provides some good floatjector airtime going down. Then there is an Immelmann followed by a hardline roll, and this double inversion sadly wasn't all that great. There was a bit of hang time, but not too much, and other than that it was boring. The final few hills and turns are alright, but a bit boring, and the final inversion is not that great. Overall, Star Trek Operation Enterprise is a shorter but a bit more intense Blue Fire. Coming in at number 57 is Huracan at Belantes. This gas-Lauer Eurofighter has an interesting history. The track pieces were in the United Arab Emirates, where the ride originally was supposed to be built, but as that project got cancelled, Belantes bought the ride. Theming-wise, this ride has about nothing, only a few aesthetics in the station. Layout-wise, Huracan is pretty good. There's a 97-degree beyond vertical drop, a 0G roll, a cobra roll, and 2 interlocking corkscrews. Especially the 0G roll is one of the best of its kind. It's super grippy, and I love it. The rest of the elements is decently forceful, so this ride would crack my top 50 if it wasn't for the roughness. I think the track profiling suffered from the long way to Asia and back, resulting in many parts of the ride being a bit rough. Some people say it's as rough as SLC's, but I can't agree there. I got multiple rewrites, yet still no headache because I braced. But it still is really uncomfortable because especially the second half of the ride has many jolts and potholes. I really would like to see a smooth clone of this coaster. Moving on, the coaster at number 56 is Juwelen at Jewel Summerland. This is a great attraction. It's built to be a family coaster, but it actually delivers some great thrills. Juwelen is an intermittent tire launch quad coaster. While the first half and launch of this ride are nothing special, the second half and launch are amazing when the coaster is warmed up. This is not the most extreme ride, but it has some fairly intense turns and snappy transitions during the very long layout. It is overall a very fun family thrill coaster that even satisfies enthusiasts. On number 55 is Silver Bullet at Knott's Berry Farm. Now the same thing I mentioned when I talked about Giant Dipper and Montezuma's Revenge. I don't remember much of this ride because I've only ridden it once. Out of the 4 B&M inverted coasters that I've ridden, this is the weakest, but it still is a solid ride. It is pretty smooth and the color scheme and the ride location is amazing. It is definitely not the most intense ride out there, but it still delivers some good forces. For Knott's Berry Farm, this ride is a great fit. I said it before and I'll say it again, because I don't remember too much of this ride, it could very well go up or down in my ranking. Back in Europe, on number 54 is Liesbeck Banen in Liesbeck. I don't think I had the best rides on this thing, because it didn't run it in the front, but I still enjoyed it. This terrain coaster is both a Schwarzkopf and a Zierer, and it's incredible for its age. It still is really smooth and it also delivers a good ride. The way the coaster works its way up and down the hillside is very impressive and makes the layout a lot more interesting. While it is not the most forceful ride, some turns were surprisingly intense nonetheless. Next time I'm at Liesbeck I have to ride this thing in the front row. Coming in at number 53 is Krake at Heidepark. Usually I don't mind short rides, but this one definitely could have used a few more elements. If this ride was as long as dive coasters like Valkyria, it would easily be in my top 50, because the 4 elements this B&M dive coaster has to offer are incredible. On the first drop you get incredible airtime and an awesome headshopper moment. The splashdown is a great scenic element. The Immelmann delivers some incredible sustained airtime on the exit, and the final hill also delivers some pretty good airtime. Sadly, that is already it. There are no more elements after that. If there was a second inversion or a helix, that would already be a huge bonus for this ride, because then you would have a somewhat satisfying duration. Some rides as short as Krake focus on one specific, absolutely ridiculous element, and sometimes that is already enough, but it does not count for Krake. On number 52 sits Rutschebahnen at Tivoli Gardens. This is currently the oldest coaster that I've ridden, but it's a great ride. It is also the only coaster with a brakeman that I've ridden, and it's such a rare thing these days. The entire ride is built into an artificial mountain with good theming. On top of that, the operations on this ride are hella fast. With 3 train operations, the line never exceeded 10 minutes during my visit. The actual ride delivers many great airtime moments and strong laterals, especially with a good brakeman that lets the train run fast. One of the best things about the ride, it has restraints that are similar to bus bars, so you always get a ton of room. It is amazing how such a nostalgic attraction still plays in the same league as many modern day coasters. The final spot of my honorable mentions, number 51, takes Rougarou at Cedar Point. I know this placement seems a bit high, but I think it's just right. Rougarou is a really fun B&M floorless coaster. It is really smooth, especially for being converted from an old stand-up coaster, and it's fairly forceful. The 3 inversions, the drop and the helix in the first half are pretty good elements. Nothing too crazy, but very fun. In the second half there is 1 corkscrew, which is a bit jerky, and a bunch of low to the ground turns, which actually deliver some good positives and laterals, as well as making the ride fairly long. Rougarou could be one of the top coasters at a smaller park, but at Cedar Point it doesn't get a lot of attention. And there you go. These were the spots 70 to 51 of my ranking. In a few weeks I will release my top 50, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Bye.